order. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That seems particularly relevant after hearing President Zelensky speak to the Congress today, which, if any of you heard, was quite a dramatic speech. Okay, the next item is a roll call.
Councilmember Polito,
Here one last time.
Councilmember Hawkins,
Here.
Lewis,
Here.
Vice Mayor Widmer,
Here.
and Mayor DeGolia.
Here. And the next item is public comment.
And I know that we have at least one person that'd like to speak under public comment.
To speak on public comments, please come up and speak right into the microphone because people online can't hear you unless you speak into the microphone. And you could give your name and address if you wish.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, for reasons that will become clear, respectfully decline your invitation to provide my name or my home address. I am here on behalf of one of your residents. His name is Bo Shan, and I'm speaking on his behalf. He wanted to be here today, but he was advised for his own safety and the safety of his family not to speak to you. As some of you may know, Mr. Shan and his family, it's probably better. Mr. Shan and his family have been required to relocate from their home here in Atherton due to concerns for their safety. During that time, people have been caused to gather in front of his house on Carolina Lane. Day after day, they stood there holding signs that contain false, defamatory, racist, and quite frankly, dangerous slurs. This is part of an organized campaign of abuse and harassment perpetrated by a man known as Kwok. He has many other names, but I'll call him Kwok. Kwok owes money to a business known as PAX. He filed for bankruptcy in an effort to avoid paying this money back. The bankruptcy proceedings are not going well for him. And so in an effort to gain an advantage, he has caused people all over the country to harass, abuse, and intimidate the business executives, their children, the trustee, the trustees' children, as well as many of the lawyers involved in these proceedings. Your resident, Mr. Shan, and his wife and his children are not involved in this business proceedings. They are simply the children of Mr. Kwok's adversaries. Mr. Kwok is a fugitive from China with a long and public history of lawless conduct, which you can research. I have here in my hand an order from the bankruptcy judge in Connecticut directing Mr. Kwok to knock it off, to stop defaming, doxing, and harassing the business executives, the trustee, and their children. This order was issued on November 23rd of this year. Mr. Kwok did not stop. I have here photographs taken at Carolina Lane here in Atherton, weeks after the judge's order, which I'm happy to provide to you after I speak. Make no mistake, the people Kwok has caused to be here in Atherton are not engaging in political speech or activism. They are harassing and abusing Mr. Shan, his wife, and their young children. And this has been going on for more than a month. At this point, Mr. Shan honestly has no idea when, if ever, he may return to his home. Yes, I will wrap it up. This is called targeted picketing. Both the Supreme Court of the United States and California Courts of Appeal have held that it is not protected First Amendment activity. We appreciate your hard work. We appreciate that as council members, as mayor, as vice mayor, as city administrator, as chief of police, you have to balance competing interests in this town. And we understand it's challenging, but we ask that you seriously consider working with your city attorney to put forth a targeted picketing ordinance like they have, for example, in San Jose and other cities around California that would prevent future events like this from happening to residents of your town. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor DeGolia, we also have Mr. Steve Seabolt, who's online, who'd like to make a public comment.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I live at 3 Carolina Lane, and my wife and I have lived here for 27 years. We live next door to the Shan family. While they have been delightful neighbors for probably 7 years, that's not really the point of my comment. My comment is the police have been terrific. It's one of the best things about living in this town is the quality of our police force. I respect the issues with competing interests. But like the previous speaker, I strongly encourage the city council to consider a targeted picketing ordinance. We live on a very small cul-de-sac. We have been subjected to picketers in front of our house for the better part of 3 weeks, almost 4. And while I appreciate free speech rights, I think there's also a right of a property owner to feel safe. And frankly, when I have a son, a daughter-in-law with a newborn baby who are reluctant to come to my house for Thanksgiving because of the picketing that is going on, frankly, my family feels unprotected. So my ask is please consider initiating this ordinance to protect my family, other people on the street, and other neighbors that may be subjected to similar type of harassment in the future. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Steve. Is there any other public comment? And if anybody online has a public comment, you can just click the reactions button on the bottom of your screen and that'll raise your hand. George.
Just to follow up for the council's information, the city attorney has advised that she and the police chief have been working on such an ordinance to have a draft, and it's making its way through the review process and will make its way to the council as well.
Okay, great. I hope Steve was able to hear that. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a presentation, which is a presentation for Stella Parsons, but the presentation isn't in the packet.
Read it for you, sir.
Sure. Why don't you go ahead and read it?
This is a proclamation in recognition of Stella Parsons, whereas Stella Parsons is celebrating her 101st birthday on December 9th, 2022. She's a longtime resident who's dedicated most of her life to being a part of the Atherton community. And whereas Stella has lived in Lindenwood for over 50 years, and the community expresses thanks to her for her lifelong support of the town. And whereas the town of Atherton City Council joins the whole community in a show of respect and admiration for Ms. Parsons upon the occasion of her 101st birthday. Now, therefore, as mayor of the town of Atherton, Mayor DeGolia hereby proclaims December 9th, 2022 in honor of Stella Parsons, wishing her a happy birthday and many more to come.
That's nice.
Yeah. And I had the honor of taking the actual proclamation that was printed up to her house. I knocked on her door and was able to read it directly to her just before her birthday. So she had the framed proclamation for her birthday, and 101.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's
So
one of the
yeah,
perks of being mayor.
that is one of the perks of being mayor, a genuine honor. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the election results and the city council reorganization. And is that
Anthony.
city clerk?
I'll take that. So thank you, Mayor and City Manager DeGolia, City Manager Rodrick. As you know, the San Mateo County Elections official has declared the results. And we received all the certification documents. So before you, we have a resolution for you to adopt those results and declare our newly elected council member incumbent Rick DeGolia, incumbent Bill Widmer, and newly elected council member Stacy Miles Holland. I'm happy to take any questions, but we can follow the next steps where we'll consider the reorganization after I present these certificates to you, which the county gave us.
Yeah.
Problem.
Thank you.
We should go.
And I think the next item is adoption of a resolution certifying the election results.
Yes, sir. So if I could get a motion in a second, I'll do a roll call vote.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Polito. Hawkins,
Yes.
Yes.
Lewis.
Yes.
Mayor DeGolia,
Yes.
and Vice Mayor Whitmer. Wonderful. So if we wanted to move along, we can go to the selection of the mayor and the vice mayor.
Actually, no, you have to seat and oath of office for
Oh,
new councilman.
you're right.
She moves up to the dais.
So what I'll do is I'll actually read your oath of office if you'd like to kind of maybe
You
step to
all?
the podium and I can
Don't
do
we?
your
Don't they
swearing
all
in.
have to do it again? Yeah, you
Uh,
get up and go.
If you'd like,
do it,
you can
yeah.
all come down here.
We need to get up and
And,
um,
swear
swear in,
Yeah.
so
and just,
we can come down to,
Should I go up?
come down to your level.
Yeah.
Again, then you will come up to our level.
Yeah, perfect. Should we stand here? Maybe we'll share the mic.
Yeah, by the mic is.
Are we gonna do it together?
Yeah, y'all do it together.
Yeah, we're like an acapella group.
We gotta be behind the mic so they can hear us.
So
Oh,
I'll-
but that way the public can't see us. There you go.
Come over here. We've got the crowd here.
Okay, great.
All
All
right,
right. thank you.
okay, so if
Being on this side.
you're not up here yet.
Just wait.
Yes.
if you all want to raise your right hand and repeat after me, I state your name,
I, Rick
Billy.
DeGolia,
do solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of California,
Constitution of the State of California,
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California.
that I take this obligation freely
I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well
that I will well
and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
As we move our newest council member up, we do have to do our.
I'm ready.
But before we move our council member out, I want to thank you for these, I think, 14 months of service, which have been really serious service. I mean, I know, you know how many hours it takes to do this job. Now that you've been at it, it's kind of different being in it than sitting and watching it, because it's a lot of time. But you've done a superb job, Bob. It's been an honor to serve with you. You bring a discipline and a perspective. You ask every question you have, which I think is exactly the right way to do this job. I have a great deal of respect for what you've done for the town, and I think you've served the residents extremely well. Oh,
oh, sorry.
and
Oh, wow. Wow.
we got a serious plaque.
Here, get over.
Oh, Bob gets it.
But
You
I
can
know,
hold it
but
up.
give it to me.
All right.
I'll get out of the way.
You can give it to him too. We're all giving it to him.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah, we can do a group shot.
Yeah, we should get Bob in the middle
Yeah.
with his French tie.
Very good.
All right,
Nice.
Thanks,
Well, thank
Bob.
you, Bob.
and we want to see that hanging up on your wall.
And-
How do you know you're gonna see my wall?
Okay.
I'll say a couple things before I leave. Rick, it's been great to work with you. You've been a great mayor, more than once, of course. And the way you boil things down and get us to the crux of the matter is really appreciated. Bill, you're the truest fiscal conservative on the council, which I can assure you many of the residents appreciate. You're also the best prepared for every meeting that we go to. And I'm so glad that both of you guys got reelected because you really do a good job for the town. Diana, she's a rookie. And you've been great. You ask good questions. You make very intelligent comments on the topic, even if it's a new topic to you. And most of all, I appreciate the fact that you don't carry on unnecessarily. You're very succinct. And it's appreciated by everyone, particularly when we're in the fourth hour of a meeting. Elizabeth, I don't think I can say that about you. Particularly after the history of the Earth Day in Atherton, but you will always be my favorite mayor. So
Aw, that's nice, Bob. Thank you.
So I'm on public comment for this item, and I'm with State Senator Josh Becker's office here to say thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember
You're gonna get
Polito.
the accolade from Senator Josh Becker's office. Yeah,
Right.
there you go. Just
We
stand up
we
and take it, okay?
recognize that you stepped up a year ago. And for democracy to work, it takes people being willing to volunteer and step up their time, and we appreciate that. So on behalf of the residents of the 13th Senate District, thank you for your service as a member of the town of Atherton Town Council. Whereas with your leadership, the town has maintained strong fiscal management, updated its housing element, and submitted it, not quite certified. We recognize that. Kept the community safe and worked through various trials and tribulations with integrity. On behalf of Senate District 13, thank you for your dedication and commitment to serving our community by stepping up to offer your time and talents in the service of others. Best wishes for your continued success.
Aw,
Okay.
that's lovely. From the senator. Very nice.
Just one more comment about Bob. You know, when we had a vacancy last November, the council had to decide whether we were going to appoint or have an election for what would be more than a year. And in the course of that discussion, the council was quite clear that it didn't want to appoint someone who would then give them incumbent status for them to run in the future, because that had been done many times in the past. And we didn't feel like that was right. We felt like the voters should decide who would be on the council. And we made that very clear in our comments. And Bob stepped forward to say that he would serve on the council and wouldn't run when he came up. And that, of course, has been done with many councils and is always a risk, because as someone gets to be known and as they get knowledge of the council, which, you know, is challenging, but is also extremely rewarding, then sometimes they decide that that commitment that they made isn't something that they're going to hold to. Bob, we never doubted that Bob was going to hold to it. He made it clear to us that he had no intention of continuing on the council, but there's always a risk. And we put our faith in Bob, and Bob completely returned that honor to us. So I really, it just speaks to his integrity. I think that's really what it speaks to.
Thank you.
thank you. I will say I feel a little guilty leaving you guys with this housing element. So if I can help, call me.
Thank you.
Bob. We need
You're
you.
being called.
So do you have-
The housing element.
Housing element. You said call. I just did.
Paul, we're gonna call you.
Oh, I-
Bob, come back. No.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the city council reorganization.
So City
Um,
Council and City Manager Roderick, as you know, annually we select a new mayor and a new vice mayor, and this will be for the calendar year of 2023. This is in accordance with the City Council Handbook and the Atherton Municipal Code. And so with your okay, I will declare the seat of mayor vacant and the seat of vice mayor vacant, and we can go through the selection process, which would start with a nomination first for the office of the role of mayor, and then we'd follow the same process for the role of vice mayor.
Well, we usually do a statement from the outgoing mayor. before
Yeah,
we
oh,
get
yes,
into
sir.
that
Yes, sir,
process,
please.
so,
Yeah, that's what it says on the agenda too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I decided to follow Bill's guidance, which is to write something up. So I have a short statement to read.
It's 3 pages long.
No, it's a page and a half, but it's 16 font. That way I can read it. It has been a great honor to serve Atherton as its mayor this past year. Atherton is a remarkable town, and we have a fabulous group of residents to represent. It's truly an honor, and I don't say that lightly. 2022 has been an extremely unusual year. First, because the role of mayor this year has been dominated by the challenge of figuring out how to responsibly respond to the state of California's onerous housing requirements without ruining the quality of life and community for the residents of Atherton. And I believe that we've worked very hard at that. Second, because over this year, Atherton opened its new town center, which took 8 years to design and to build after 3 failed attempts over 20 years to raise the funding to do the job. We did the job. The new complex is indeed a game changer for the town of Atherton, but the effort to get it completed properly and on budget was extremely time consuming and required an enormous amount of focus, which I think we were successful in doing. Finally, the fact that this year was our 3rd year in a row of having to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on council meetings and staff health has been a major issue. When I began this year, I spoke about how service on this council is the most time-consuming volunteer work that I've ever engaged in. It has been a genuine pleasure to serve with my fellow council members because we've been so extremely collaborative, and we've worked so closely with our city manager, George Rodericks, and his excellent team. I am proud of all that we've accomplished, and I'm also happy to leave the post. When I accepted this position a year ago, I had several priorities. I'll focus briefly on 4 of them. The first and foremost was to successfully open the new Atherton Town Center, and notwithstanding the product and personnel delays that were caused by the pandemic, we completed this project under budget. This is the largest project in Atherton's history by more than an order of magnitude. We've received many, many thank yous for this effort, and I am sure that this will produce community and staff rewards for many, many years to come. We recently were notified that the library received LEED Gold certification, and various parts of the project have been entered in several architectural award contests. I am proud to have been deeply involved with this project from the beginning. Second, we have continued to prioritize the safety of Atherton residents and to support our police department. Over this year, we expanded the deployment of automated license plate readers throughout Atherton. I think Atherton must have the largest number of automated license plate readers per capita of any city in the United States. Protection for our residents is always a top item on the council's list. And I am proud how seriously this mission has been carried out by the department and how our chief has prioritized improving the department with advanced technology and rigorous training. And I'm particularly proud of the drone program that just recently got launched. Third, I supported a continued focus on conservative fiscal management of the town. Nothing illustrates this focus better than our fiscal management of the town center project and our constant monitoring and management of pension and other retirement health care costs. Finally, when I was mayor in 2015, we launched the process to declare the first quiet zone in San Mateo County at Fair Oaks Lane. When Caltrain closed the Atherton train station, we required that they agreed to design and deploy quad gates on Watkins Avenue, which would enable the town to declare an extension of our quiet zone throughout all of Atherton. While we didn't achieve the goal of completing construction of those quad gates this year, the design process has been completed, and Caltrain has committed to completing the construction in 2023. I expect that this enabling us to establish that quiet zone will have a greater impact on the quality of life than we experienced with the first quiet zone. In closing, I want to thank the members of the council for your dedication to Atherton. I want to thank every member of our staff for your professionalism and dedicated work. And I want to thank each of the residents who worked so hard on the committees that give this council such good guidance. I look forward to continuing to represent our residents and to work with the council and staff over years to come. Thank you.
With the office of mayor vacant, it's open the floor to nominations for the role of mayor.
And I'll nominate Bill Widmer.
I'll second.
Are there any other nominations? Nominations closed. We need a vote in favor. Roll call for Bill as mayor.
Councilmember Holland,
Aye.
Councilmember Hawkins,
Aye.
Councilmember Lewis,
Aye.
Councilmember DeGolia.
Aye.
And Councilmember Whitmer.
Congratulations.
I don't think I need to vote.
Well, you could decline.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Ray.
All right, we'll follow the same procedure for vice mayor. The vice mayor role is vacant. We'll take nominations from the floor. There's no need for a second for nominations. We have any nominations for vice mayor?
Okay, so I'd like to start that process and nominate Diana. And hopefully she can step in and we'll agree to do the job and we'll win everybody's confidence and show, you know, what she's made of and show what she's learned over the last 2 years. So with that, I'd love to have Diana as the vice mayor working with me, and we'll work together in each and every mayor's town hall meeting.
Are there any other nominations for vice mayor? Hearing none, we need a roll call vote for Diana as vice mayor.
Councilmember Holland.
Aye.
Councilmember Lewis,
Aye.
Councilmember DeGolia.
Aye.
Mayor Whitmer.
Aye.
Okay, Councilmember Hawkins, congratulations.
There is an oath of office to be done for these roles as well. So the city clerk will administer that and then we'll switch seats.
You guys can keep your seats, I think, for that one, or would you like them to come down here?
they can stand up.
Yeah, you can stand up here.
Stand up here by the American flag.
I have the flag.
Yeah. Get by the flag.
Yeah.
You'll raise your right hands. Repeat after
Here.
me. I, please state your name.
Where?
I, Bill Whitmer,
I, Diana Hawkins Manuel,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance
I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California,
to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California.
that I take this obligation freely
Take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
that I will well
that I will
and faithfully
and faithfully
discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
discharge the duties upon the office which I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Okay.
We just get to hang out.
All right.
Yeah, we just kind of chill.
Leave them like.
Okay, then.
Should I go?
If you like-
Right.
I might- might-
Getting your advice on-
Consent and then just those reading the rules.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Let's see what.
So. My glasses on so far. We're
Yeah.
reporting out of closed session. We didn't do a closed session. We did a closed session.
So that's yours.
Oh, they said, so they said no.
I didn't.
That's
pull-
what's that one.
Consent agenda.
No, that's
so
mine.
That's one through whatever.
Okay, so thank you all. I've made a few comments and I wrote them down so I don't miss anybody or anything. First off, I want to thank my colleagues for the honor of serving mayor for this, our centennial year. I want to also recognize the residents. Oh, sorry, you want me to start again?
I'll help you.
Okay, thanks. I want to thank my colleagues for this honor of serving for mayor for our centennial year. I want to recognize the residents who had the confidence in my leadership and approved my serving a fourth term on the council. And most importantly, I want to thank my wife, Mary Beth, for her sacrifices while I did my work in support of the town and left many, many things to her. It should come as no surprise that I have learned a lot during my years here. And I hope that jointly we will continue to maintain the collegial environment that we've enjoyed over these last few years, not few years, but many years. And that has made the past councils so successful, whereas other ones perhaps were not. And we've accomplished a lot. Rick highlighted a number of them. It's been a pleasure working with you all over these years. At times, we've had different positions on topics, and we've worked, but all of us have worked to make Atherton a great place and to do the right thing. And it's my hope that our newest councilwoman will quickly become part of this effective team. Obviously, the housing element is our first and most pressing issue, but there are a lot more, not the least of which is planning our 100th year celebration. To this end, I would like to get things started and establish a subcommittee to develop recommendations for the celebration, as well as the recommendation on should we appoint a council citizen committee to do this. As such, I would like Elizabeth Lewis, who was our most senior council member, to work with our former mayor, Rich DeGoya, who is most knowledgeable about the town's history, to get started on this. And I would hope that they could come back to the council fairly quickly with recommendations on how to proceed, what we should potentially do, and come up with a budget.
Budget.
So with without taking any more time, I would like to really thank Mayor DeGoya for his leadership over this past year and for spending the time he and I spent together each week, mayor's office hours, and we accomplished a lot there. And I really appreciated that mentorship and those discussions. And I thank the whole council for this honor, and I look forward to working with all of you in the future. Thank you very much. Okay.
And I'll see if there's any public comment on this item, and there's none online.
Okay, as we move on, then there were departmental reports that were in the agenda packet that came out. Does any council member have any questions or comments on that before we take any public?
Nope. No.
Okay, are there any public comments with regards to the departmental reports that George and his staff do a great job putting out, and they're very, very informative? Seeing none, then we will go ahead and we will then move on. We're now going to go into the consent calendar, which is items number 3 through number 9. Do any council members have any items they'd like to pull for discussion? Seeing none, does anybody in the audience or online, do they want to discuss any of those items 3 through 9 that are in the council pack?
I move approval.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Okay, we're having now moving to the public hearing. Thank you. We're going to have item number 10, which is the introduction of the first reading and waive the actual reading of the ordinance, which amends the Atherton Municipal Code, Chapter 8.16 with relation to the noise ordinance. Are there any questions from, do you want to make a comment?
Yes,
Go
sir.
ahead.
We have to open the public hearing, begin the staff report, et cetera. So this is the, as you mentioned, the introduction for first reading and waiving future readings of an ordinance amending the Atherton Municipal Code, chapter 8.6 related to noise control. During the November 16th council meeting, the council reviewed and discussed possible options to amend the ordinance. Council also received a noise level demonstration from an Atherton resident. And as a result of that discussion, the council provided specific direction to staff for amendments. There are a few amendments to the ordinance. The first is the provision of a definition within the ordinance to define social gatherings. That consists of 10 or more individuals at a private premises or a social activity. It includes the reduction of the hours of exception for social gatherings on Sundays. It used to go to 10 p.m. It's now backed up to 8 p.m. It reduces the decibel level for noise from 10 p.m. to midnight for social gatherings from 75 dBA to 70 dBA for those 2 hours. And it amends the violations provision to provide for more discretion in enforcement and allowing the officers to use may use a misdemeanor if they can't get that event under control or the property owner refuses to comply. With those changes, as recommended by the council, those are all incorporated in the attached ordinance. It's recommended that the council conduct a public hearing, take any questions, and then introduce the ordinance. That concludes the staff report. The police chief and commander, I believe, are both here to answer any questions of specifics that the council may have, as well as the city attorney.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody on the council have a question on this ordinance?
I have a
Have a
question.
comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
My recollection from when we discussed this before was that the reason that the city attorney had recommended that we include the ability of the officer to consider a violation a misdemeanor rather than just an infraction, which it previously had been, was because that would allow for multiple fines if, in fact, the violator didn't respond to a written warning. But I wasn't sure if I understood that correctly. So I just wanted to ask the city attorney to clarify that issue.
Good evening. Yes, I can clarify that, Councilmember DeGolia. The government code clarifies that violations of an ordinance are considered to be an infraction unless we specifically make them a misdemeanor. And infractions have monetary limitations. It's $100 for the first violation, $200 for the second, and so on until you reach the maximum of $500. So the purpose behind changing this from an infraction to a misdemeanor was to be able to assess a higher penalty for noise violations, and particularly so for repeat offenders.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
So my question was similar to that, is that the to verify that the reason that we have added the misdemeanor clause was so it was not just a blanket across the town, but it's for the egregious offenders, where those residents who have parties all the time and have loud noises. Is that correct?
That is also correct. So we did make modifications, and the ordinance now reads that if corrective action is not taken within a specified time and written in the specified notice, then the violation can constitute a misdemeanor. So it is not staff's intention that any noise violation automatically results in a misdemeanor violation.
I have a follow-up question to the mayor, just real quickly. So how do you, in your opinion, Mona, see how this is going to impact Athertonians having large parties and their quality of life for having parties and celebrations if they, as they have had over the years?
The purpose and intent of this ordinance is not to impact existing residents with their celebrations or events. There are some time limitations, of course, with respect to events, but this ordinance gives the police department some additional flexibility so that if there are those repeat offenders, they can write down, again, this would be in writing, a notice. So the property owner and tenant are aware of the noise ordinance, that they're violating the noise ordinance, and they're asked to come into compliance or to turn off the noise inducing issue at play. If that is not corrected, and if the police department is responding to the same property for the same noise violation again, then they have the opportunity to fine them up to $1,000 per violation, plus have the constitution for a misdemeanor. Again, for most property owners, this is not going to impact them. This is only the one-off situations where there's just a disregard for compliance. And the process as a whole is summarized, I would say, in chapter 8.16.080 under the subheading of violations that describes what I was explaining about providing the advance notice, allowing them an opportunity to comply and so forth.
Thank you.
Diana?
Yeah, actually for you, Mona, in the document, the word may has been put in, which means that you don't automatically get the misdemeanor and the fine. You may get it. So how do we protect ourselves if there's a situation where in one case they do it, in another case they don't? How do we protect ourselves from claims of perhaps discrimination or uneven applying of the rules, since the rules are not definite?
So if you may recall, we made that change based on the council's direction at the workshop that occurred last month. However, as long as we're not acting in an arbitrary and capricious manner, and we can demonstrate why we would like to advance this to a misdemeanor, we don't have any exposure to liability. An example of that would be police department goes out, documents the number of responses that they've gone out, the fact that the property owner has received written notice, that they refuse to comply, and let's say that has happened 3 times in one night, we can then forward that and suggest that deserves a misdemeanor charge versus a property owner who they've had to go back one time. And again, as long as we treat all property owners similarly, let's say, you know, if we're going 3 times to every property, that is the essentially litmus test. But our office works regularly with the police department too. If they have questions, they know to contact me. We will ensure that they are trained sufficiently to make sure that there's no arbitrary enforcement of this.
Any other comments or questions? Any public comments on this? I know that there was one from Zach. I don't know if it got distributed. I hope it did. Who was asking for the noise levels to be reduced, actually. Are there any other comments on this? Public
Just
comments?
Through the mayor, there were also other
Oh, yeah, I
residents
know, I
who've
understand.
made comments that they wanted it to not be reduced. So, I mean,
Yeah.
we have residents.
I just want to
on
make sure
both
that they
sides,
got distributed.
and I'm not sure that it's all in our packet.
There were, as you know, the council has a public email address for the whole council that residents can provide public comment to. There were at least 3 that I'm aware of. One from 3 property owners expressing different opinions, as Councilmember Lewis articulated.
Okay. All right.
Was there more than one that was in favor?
Of
You weren't a council member yet.
there were 2 that were opposed to the misdemeanor
Just right here.
criteria with the concern that the police department would be arresting individuals. And then there was a 3rd that was in favor of reducing the decibel levels for social gatherings even more than the council did.
Can I ask Mona one more question?
Sure.
Mona, in the case that we've all assumed that everyone's going to pay the $1,000 and not get the 6 months in jail. So my question for you, is there any way we can codify that so that we're Because we're putting a misdemeanor on it, which goes on people's records, and it can be a problem in the life of some young person starting their career. So is there a way to codify that we're really doing? I've heard this talked around in a circle about, oh, it's an administrative fee. Is there a way to make it an administrative fee? I know how we got to misdemeanor because it limits on the infractions, but is there anything we can do to codify that someone actually doesn't go to jail for playing their music too loud?
Well, we have codified it. And if you look at chapter 8.16.100, I think it's the last sentence of that paragraph, and I'll read it to you. It says that first-time violators will be warned. Upon subsequent violations of the provisions of this chapter, the police personnel utilized during a second response after that first warning to control a threat shall be deemed to be on special security assignment over and above beyond. So again, we give a warning first, then we give a written warning, and then it's only after the third time that they are subject to full enforcement, inclusive of administrative citation and the potential for moving forward with an misdemeanor.
Yes, Rick.
So Mona, my understanding is the reason that this whole misdemeanor issue came up, which was not something that anybody on the council requested, was because what the previous fine of $100 going to $200 was ineffective. And people were basically just totally ignoring a $100 or $200 fine. And what was requested from the council is that we increase the amount of the fine to $1,000, and that if somebody, and that's after somebody doesn't respond. So you're blasting your music. It has to be louder than a leaf blower, because the noise, the maximum noise level up to 10 o'clock is 75 dBA, which is about the noise of a leaf blower. So if it's louder than a leaf blower and somebody calls the police, then the police come out, they tell somebody to reduce the noise. If they don't reduce the noise, in the past, they got fined $100. And they just, and the reason this came up is there were instances where people just paid the fine and ignored the warning and continued to blast the music at louder than a leaf blower. So we wanted to increase the fine because we felt that that would be more effective. And in specific, the request was, can we make the fine $1,000? And if somebody doesn't respond within 15 minutes, then they can get another $1,000 fine. And my understanding is we were told the only way we could do that is if there were an option for the police officer to call it an infraction or a misdemeanor. The intent was never to actually have it effective as a misdemeanor. It'll be an infraction, but $1,000 infraction. The teeth of the $1,000 is what I think will be most effective. But I must say that if somebody's refusing after 3 warnings and 3 $1,000 fines that turn their music down below the sound of a leaf blower, they ought to have a misdemeanor. So that's plenty of notice, in my opinion, but I think that's how it came up. I don't think there was any desire to have the misdemeanor.
That's correct, but I want to mention one other point. Even setting aside this requirement, not this requirement, but this provision in the ordinance about misdemeanor, California Penal Code Section 415 makes the misdemeanor anytime a member of the public creates a public disturbance, and that includes a noise violation. So that is an existing law. We're not changing the law. Even if this ordinance was not adopted, that would be a remedy that's available to our police department. So the only additional factor that benefits Atherton in including it in the ordinance is that it gets the attention of wealthy residents who are not otherwise inclined to comply with our ordinance with more paltry fines. That's essentially it.
That's new information. Isn't that new information?
That's new information, yes.
What, that there was
That-
something
it's
in
a
the,
nuisance.
no, if it was already codified in our ordinances, it's not new information.
Well,
About the misdemeanor.
we had talked about it as this was the only remedy for this, for it was to raise the bar and do the misdemeanor. She just said, and we said the reason we
Added
did it
ordinance.
was that it's a tool that the police can use. We want the police to have a tool. She just said that it's already in there. So if you're going to do a public nuisance, which is what that would be, we already had it in there. So we didn't.
No,
need to
no,
add
I'm sorry.
this.
We do not have it in there. That's state law. That's the penal code, which is different than the municipal code.
And
So
some state,
State law so think of them as two separate issues. So state law allows the police department to enforce provisions of the penal code. That includes things like disturbing the peace, that includes parking violations and so forth. The reason why we included this in our ordinance is so that it would add leverage for higher fines. Because if we only have infractions, we are limited to $100 per fine per day, $200 for the second subsequent one, up to $500. So we put it in this ordinance to be able to impose a higher monetary penalty. But in terms of the criminal nature of that, this ordinance is not impacting exposure to a misdemeanor because that law already exists.
So,
So
right.
let me, can I ask you a clarifying question on
Yeah.
that one? So you just said that if you, what would happen if they, instead of doing this, they said it's disturbing the peace and they enforce a state law? What's the fine there? Is it $1,000?
That is not a fine that goes to the city. If there is a violation of state law, that's something that the courts handle. That's not a penalty that the town is able to collect on.
But if the police does it, the police is the person who enforces that. Is that correct? It's our police that would enforce a disturbance of the peace.
Correct,
So what's the difference then? The money goes to the state and not to the city, or what's the
Correct.
difference?
correct.
So the
And
only
court-
difference is it goes to the state and not the city.
Well, a couple of things. Number one, the court has jurisdiction, whether it even wants to, the district attorney's office has to make a determination that they even want to prosecute such an arrest. That is within their purview. Secondly, the court retains jurisdiction as to whether or not to collect a fine or not. So we are operating separate and independent of the court system because we say that we as a town want to establish certain rules that we want our residents and our property owners to comply with, and failure to comply with those results in certain penalties. So ours is separate, but in addition to what the state requires.
mhm. Well, through the mayor,
Yes.
I don't think that we imposed that $1,000 fine because we think we're going to make money on it. I think that the only reason we thought that we would impose $1,000 fine and then continue if they continue to violate it is as a penalty that might be so onerous to the
To get there.
violator to get them to stop.
Yeah.
But, that's an arbitrary number that, somebody pulled out of the hat. So I'm kind of seeing this in a little bit of different light because if the misdemeanor violation is currently in our existing situation law, but it's not spelled out in our ordinance. I think that's the difference, is that if it's spelled out in our ordinance, it really did get a lot of people's attention because, we don't want to be putting, making people have a misdemeanor on their record for violating the noise ordinance. Well, they didn't realize that that was a tool that the police had in their pocket anyway. Right? Am I misunderstanding this new revelation to me? Rick?
I think that the police would have that in their pocket because a nuisance is under state law
Mhm.
rather than under municipal code is something that could be asserted. But as the city attorney said, what happens is that's a referral to the district attorney. The district attorney has to decide to spend time to prosecute. It's not a penalty that somebody at the scene
Mhm.
is going to have to pay $1,000 fine
Mhm.
and that will necessarily convince them to reduce the level of noise. The idea is not getting people to shut off their music. It's just to have the music at a reasonable level.
Mhm.
And
Right.
the only reason that I think this came up from our discussion was to give the police a tool that they could use in a reasonable way. And look, our police are extremely respected. They're not out, they're community police. They're not out there beating people over the head. And this is just a situation. There's been a couple events where people didn't respond to the police. They
Yeah.
just paid the $100 fine. So I think what was said was this is just increasing the level of fine, and and the desire is to get compliance, and nobody's looking to make money off this. There's no way we make money off it. It costs the police more than $1,000 to go out there.
And with the court system the way it is and the backlog on prosecutions, there's no way a sound violation would actually be prosecuted.
Exactly.
And so, this gives our police, which they came up with, this was a nice suggestion. It says, this would give us a little more authority to, get them to comply as opposed to be like some of our people that violate codes. And they say, how much is the code? $100. Okay, how about I write you a year's worth? Okay, so, the people that are complaining about the noise have the right to quiet enjoyment of their property as well.
Mhm.
And so this is I think it's
I
a
think
balanced agreement, a balanced ordinance. And, I guess that's it. So unless anybody has another comment, then I'd like
Can
to.
I ask the police chief to talk about it? I'd like to hear his opinion.
Sure,
Oh,
go
yeah.
ahead. Go ahead.
Yes, I would like to know it was implied that this came from you guys. So I'm wondering, is this a tool that you really need? And was this coming from you? Let's start with that.
Well, I think it is a tool that will enable us to, if it comes to that situation, I can almost certainly guarantee you that we would never make an arrest in this situation. In my history being here and my past assignments and in talking with officers that have served here for over 20 years, it's never come to that situation. To be very honest and transparent, we were not responding properly when we were getting noise complaints, which led to some of the confusion that the resident who appeared here, it was on us. And we corrected that very promptly. We're now getting a very uniform response. It's an educational approach, which both the offending and then the reporting party appreciate. And so I don't anticipate there being a problem, but if in case that we do have it, we can fine $1,000 every 15 minutes. And I don't think we're going to have an issue at all, but it is a tool there if it comes to that.
Yeah.
But I can guarantee you the concern about arrest, I understand. I just don't see that happening. And if it was getting to that situation, our officers have discretion. My direction would be that they would need to consult with the commander just so we have another level head as to what's happening.
All right, thanks.
My biggest issue is not being invited to these parties, but that's.
Thanks, chief.
Question for the chief, actually. Sorry.
Yes, you can do your microphone.
Yes. How often in the past have you even needed to use fines to shut down parties?
I don't know that since I've been here, we have. This is Lisa Marie, our code enforcement officer. So I don't know how often that has been.
One of the properties specifically that we had, that Mark brought up in his presentation, when he brought that to noise schools,
Yes.
they. They responded 3 or 4 times, gave warnings, and I sent $700 in citations out over the course of that for that specific property. There were repeat offenses from the year before that we have history of for that property as well for 2 years prior to that. Which was the need for being able to maybe up the fines a little bit because it didn't matter. They were just willing to pay the fines, $100, $200, $500. We had a couple of different noise violations that I wrote $100 fine here or there, but they had shut down the party in a timely manner. And it was closer to the end of the party when we responded, when our officers actually went out to respond. They were already shutting down anyway. They reported it to me and we sent the $100 fine the next day
subsequently because the party had already been shut down and they came into compliance.
Got it. Yeah.
So I would say probably anywhere between, in the last 3 years, I've seen fines from my predecessor and myself upwards from, let's say $1,000 to $2,000 for the noise violation specifically over that time period.
But I will say that's a rare instance.
Yeah.
We get about 5 noise complaints a month. Several of those usually it isn't a violation. They're considering it a violation. We respond. Kids, birthday pool party, we have our decimal readers. It's not, it has not been a real issue. And I think that the main point is that we corrected, our failing in not responding in a uniform manner.
Okay, thanks, Chief.
Good.
All right,
Public comment.
yeah, I asked for public comments before, but I'll ask again. Public comments?
Anybody online?
Yes, I just want to add just one quick comment. We do have one non-resident who's probably the loudest in Atherton. And that's Caltrain or Caltrans or whichever one it is. So that's 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. honking the horn all the way down. We live a mile from the track and it wakes me up probably 3 times a week. So can we hold them in contempt and and fine them every night?
That will end once we establish the quiet zone all the way through Atherton, which we will do by the end of next year.
Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to jump on one thing on the other, but that is probably the loudest on a regular synchronized basis, right? I'm
You're
sure
not
a
the
lot of people-
first. It's mentioned train horns. You may think you are, but you're not. Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right, so the closed public comments, and I think we've had comments from the council. So why don't we go ahead and take a vote?
Well, wait, is there a motion?
Move motion, yes. Why don't we take a motion? I'm going to move that we approve this first reading by waiving the actual reading of it and passing this on to come for another review next month, as well as 30 days thereafter before it becomes effective. All in,
I'd like to offer an amendment.
okay?
I'd like to amend it to make the maximum 70 dBA the whole time, not just between 10 and midnight. And the reason I'm doing that is 75 dBA is the noise of a leaf blower. And this isn't measured at the source of the noise. It's measured at your property line. So if my next door neighbor is having a party and the noise at my property line is the noise of a leaf blower, I think it's too loud. 70 dB, the loudest any neighboring community allows the maximum to be is Portola Valley allows 65. Every other local community is at 60 dBA, which is what our noise ordinance says, other than for the exception of a social gathering. And I think Atherton properties are large, and I have no problem with being allowing the loudest of our neighbors. But to go all the way to 75, I just don't think we need that level of noise at our fence line. So I will offer an amendment.
I accept,
70.
I accept that.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
Hillsborough, in their ordinance, George and I just saw this the other day, is at 85 dBs for live music. So if you have a live music at your house, it's 85. And they're a comparable community to us in terms of the size of, well, actually, they're probably smaller. But, they're
They're larger
Yeah.
and they're hilly and they're hilly and they're hilly. Yeah, yes.
because
And
the lot size of where you're measuring makes a difference.
No, you measure it at your
I
property
understand
line.
that, But if our properties are bigger and they're willing to do 85, you said that we were the most liberal, we're not.
We
That's
are-
what I'm saying.
we
It's
are
85. in
all
Burlington.
of those around us. I
Okay.
don't know what Hillsborough.
And I'd like to make a comment also
Go ahead.
to the mayor. Our current noise ordinance is at 75, and it's been that way for years and years and years and years. And we've never had residents wanting to change it. One resident had an issue with a problem neighbor and brought it to our attention, and now we're changing it. Now it's not acceptable. And I think that for years and years and years and years, we lived very comfortably with the existing noise dB level. So I oppose your amendment. I will not vote for it.
Okay, well,
And I suggest what you vote on the amendment first and.
Yeah.
Then,
so we'll vote on the amendment first, which was to, you want to restate it?
Reduce it.
the
to
amendment
70.
is to reduce the maximum noise level for a social gathering from 75 dBA for up to 10 PM on most days, and I guess 8 PM on Sunday.
I think there's a motion on the floor and an amendment to the motion, which was accepted
Right,
by the individual who made the motion.
right,
So you're actually voting on the introduction of the ordinance
yes.
as amended.
As amended.
And
Okay,
that amendment means that you're going to second the motion as amended.
yeah, there's been a second.
So I'll do a roll call vote with the permission of the mayor.
Sorry, new kid, I have a question. So with the amendment now, what we're voting on is 70?
Mhm,
75, I believe.
No, it's
70.
the 70.
70.
for social
With the
gathering
amendment.
exceptions.
So the amendment is included in what we're voting on right now.
Correct.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Councilmember Holland,
No,
Councilmember Lewis,
No,
Councilmember DeGolia.
Yeah.
Vice Mayor Hawkins Manwellian
No,
and Mayor DeGolia, Mayor Whitmer.
Yes,
the amendment fails.
Motion fails.
okay, so then we have a amendment then to approve the,
I'll make a motion to approve the noise ordinance as we have articulated with the current additions of the that have been added. And I can't enumerate them all right now,
Introduction as
I'll-
as read.
as read.
Yes,
I'll
as read.
second it.
Councilmember Holland,
yes,
Councilmember Lewis,
Yes,
Councilmember DeGolia,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hawkins Manwellian,
no.
and Mayor Whitmer.
Yes. Okay, so that concludes our agenda. There's no regular agenda items. Are there any council reports or comments?
Nope.
Any further future agenda items that somebody would like to bring up? Or any public comments? Or we can adjourn and go to a party.
move to adjourn.
Okay.